Hello and welcome to One Fall TV. My name is Lord Andy Coyne, and what an exciting time it is to be a fan of the Australian wrestling scene. And why? Because New Japan Pro Wrestling are coming to Australia. They'll be landing on our shores on the 16th of February as they take part in a 4-night tour as they go all across Australia, including Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney, and of course, Perth. A man joining me at this time is someone who's not only synonymous with Australian wrestling, but is also part of New Japan itself. And that man is, of course, Gino Gambino, a.k.a. Mr. Juice.
Thank you so much for having me. For Season 2.
Season 2,
yes.
Indeed. Of course, you were our very first guest when we actually started with Season 1. And I have to admit, I'm impressed. You've spruced up a little bit, just like myself.
Look, I'm getting paid that little bit more now, so I can afford the finer things.
Indeed. In fact, that's a mighty fine watch you're wearing.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah,
I don't know if it's real, but
the way the light
it tells the time.
The way the light hits it actually blinds me, which is a sign of a quality
Just
watch.
like my ego.
Just like your ego. And, well, okay, we'll talk about that later. But, you know, I think in the public eye for the Australian wrestling fans, I think the relationship with New Japan sort of really came about back in August this past year when there was actually a New Japan sort of tryout for the Australian wrestlers, really to see, so that New Japan could see what the Australian wrestling was all about. I mean, did you think this day would ever come?
It's funny. A lot of people ask me, how did it come? And it honestly started with a cup of coffee at Papa Rich, out of all places. Okay. So, you know, 4 years ago, I met Bad Luck Farley, the underboss in New Zealand, when I was wrestling there, and we just hit it off really well. And he would come to Melbourne to visit family, and each time he did, him and I would catch up for a coffee and just have chats about what we think is possible in the Australian and New Zealand scene. And it's funny, I remember the first thing we spoke about was bringing New Japan out for a tour, and we both laughed because we thought how impossible that actually is. And now we're here. So it's really crazy how quickly things can turn.
I was going to say, I imagine, though, there were quite a few doubters that thought that this might never happen. I mean, do you feel vindicated that it's all come together, and it's all come together just so beautifully?
I think vindicated is a harsh word, because it wasn't about proving people wrong for me. It was more about I wanted everyone to have a chance. I used to watch Progress Wrestling and, you know, stuff in the UK and think to myself, we're at that level and we're just not getting the acknowledgement for it. And I wanted us to. I wanted wrestling in Australia to be noticed. So for me, I actually feel bad for those people who doubted it, because they missed out on an opportunity where now there is, you know, 8 Australians on a New Japan tour going around this country, and I ended up doing Wrestle Kingdom. Like, people got opportunities from this tryout, and those people unfortunately missed out. I
was going to say, as you say, a number of Australian wrestlers got to take part in that tryout. Do you think they brought their all? Do you think they brought their A game? Do you think they actually showed exactly what Australia has to offer?
Well, yeah, I think they did. We had 40 of the best in this country at that tryout, which is a really large number for a tryout. So it was tough, but you know, we had the head bookers of New Japan at the tryout with us, and I remember driving back to their hotel with them, and they said standards very high. And I think that's a pat on the back for all of us, for all our trainers and coaches who throughout the years have taken us through, you know, our beginning, that we are at a standard where New Japan thinks that we're worth it.
And you say this started with a single cup of coffee.
Yeah.
So I suppose what you're saying, if there's anyone who's watching this, whether you're within wrestling or even if you're outside of wrestling, I suppose networking is the key in many ways, just building those relationships.
So people think, you know, that networking is kiss-assing, and it's not. There's a really fine line between the two. Yes, I can admit that, but the difference is kiss-assing is you pretend to be someone you're not. And networking is being the best of yourself. I would buy you a cup of coffee, Andy, as much as I would the underboss. Yeah, that's right. And the funny thing is, every time we went for coffee, Tox paid for it. You know, so it's just about being the best you. And if you've got an idea and if you've got passion, I really think it shows through your conversations.
Now, of course, Mr. Bad Luck Farley, he's obviously got a training school over in New Zealand. Have you actually been to see the training school itself?
Yeah, I spent a few months there, and that's how, again, I ended up with this opportunity at New Japan. Was I went to a New Japan dojo. Yeah. He until a week ago, was the only outside of Japan affiliated New Japan dojo. Now, obviously, LA Dojo has opened up again, where guys like Hartley Jackson, Davis Storm, Mikey Nichols all went 10, 15 years ago. You know, so Aussies have tried this before, and it's just seemed to have happened at the right time for us. You know, New Japan's reached its peak of popularity, and we are probably the best version of wrestling in this country that we've ever had. But yeah, I did spend a bit of time at the dojo, and it is tough work. It is really hard, and it's good to see that it's not just a, hey, come to a wrestling school. It's, no, you're going to learn the New Japan way.
Fascinating. Now, I think it's interesting because obviously after you met Bad Luck Fale, obviously clearly your relationship with New Japan would continue to grow and continue to prosper. I mean, which other individuals did you get to meet as you sort of went along that journey?
Oh, geez, there's a lot. I mean, I've dealt with people from the head office. I've met the president of New Japan. I've met the head bookers of New Japan. It's crazy to think, you know, a year ago I was wrestling in front of 40 people in Queensland, and, you know, now I've got the opportunity to shake hands with the president of New Japan. So, look, there isn't just one individual who's made this happen. Everyone that works for New Japan, be it the office or the talent, want the Australian sort of relationship to build. And that's something that I think is really exciting for us.
Now, I've known you for quite a few years, and I know that you've always been passionate about New Japan Pro Wrestling, sort of as a promotion and as a product. So, you know, it did make me smile when you got to make your debut for New Japan at Wrestle Kingdom 12 of all places. I would love to know what your morning was like as you were heading over to the Tokyo. I would love to hear
I'm going to tell a story that I probably haven't told too many people because it's a bit embarrassing, but New Japan invited my partner to come with me to obviously sharing this experience, and I got up that morning. I had breakfast with Tox Farley and went upstairs, and I was like, oh, I'm feeling okay. I'm not feeling too nervous. And my partner goes to me, oh, are you okay? You're not nervous at all. I said, yeah. And I went, ugh, and vomited everywhere in the hotel room. And she goes, oh, I guess you are nervous. I'm like, no, I think I'm okay now. And then I laid down and my nose started bleeding. So obviously there was a lot of anxiety happening in that short span of time. And people who do know me know me from
physiological symptoms.
Yeah,
right there.
Absolutely. But look, it's a real surreal experience. You know, you walk in a tunnel underneath the Tokyo Dome Hotel to the Dome. And you sit in a change room, and it's an awe-inspiring experience. You are sitting in there with people I've watched from New Japan for years, and they're coming up and introducing themselves to me and thanking me for being there. It's a really crazy time.
So what did it feel like, though, when you actually got to head to the ring for that New Japan Battle Royal? You walked out in front of all those people. You've been telling me about how nervous you were. And you're like, apparently you're shooting blood out your nose. You're projectile vomiting everywhere.
The thing
you
is,
look pretty calm walking out there.
I had to go to the toilet so bad, but I didn't have time.
I thought you were flexing.
No, but I had to go to the bathroom so bad, and I was standing there, and Tiger Mask was before me, and he had walked out, so we all stand in a separate area. Obviously, we don't want to bash each other before the match. And I was standing there, and the operator that was running, obviously, times to make sure that we're sticking to, obviously, the TV schedule said, we're running very far behind. Can you run to the ring? And all I could think to myself was, they don't obviously know that I can't run. So it was a bit of an experience. So I try to get to the ring as quick as I can. And yeah, it was really great. It was funny. I remember walking out and the crowd was pretty silent. And that's to be expected. I've never been to New Japan before, and I didn't expect anyone to know me. But by the end, after my elimination from Finley, I walked out and the crowd applauded me as I was leaving. So I felt like I made a good impression. I mean, I got to pin Taka Michinoku.
Yeah, that lariat you gave him was pretty tasty, I've got to say.
Yeah, I kind of felt it in me, so I thought I'm going to just throw a haymaker and he can hope for the best.
And indeed he did. So obviously New Japan, they're here in Australia. They're going to be taking part in a 4-day tour. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. What do you hope is the future for New Japan here in Australia? What do you want to happen after this tour?
Oh, it's a really interesting question. I mean, for years, Ring of Honor have had a relationship with New Japan in the States. And I would love to think that Australia can do the same thing, that we could be somewhere where they send their young boys on excursion, or, you know, somewhere that they just come and pick and choose as they please the talent that we've got here. I really hope we've given them such a, you know, inspiring and confidence in us that they feel they can just have that kind of business relationship.
So, of course, you've become very good friends with Bad Luck Fale, and obviously together you are the Bullet Club representatives on this side of the globe.
Yep.
And I presume at the Tokyo Dome you obviously got to meet the wider Bullet Club family, so to speak. And you will get an opportunity to compete in one heck of an Australian dream match when you join with other members of Bullet Club to take on the resident powerhouse stable here in Australia, TMDK, the mighty Don't Kneel. It's going to be an absolute 8-man tag team war. Is this a dream match?
I think it's something different for me. You're right, I do get to tag with the greatest of the Bullet Club. I get to tag with Kenny Omega, Chase Owens and Tox Fale. But I think it's more proving a point to Team DK for me. I mean, for years I used to hassle those guys to let me join Team DK. And I've done videos with them, I've done promos, I've hung out with them. And I don't know, for some reason, I guess they didn't trust me to, wear the brand Team DK. And here I am, Bullet Club. Like, sorry, guys, I'd rather pay off my house with teacher sales.
No, that's fair enough. And if you got to hit one of them with a massive lariat and pin them 1, 2, 3 in front of all of these Australian wrestling fans, which member of TMDK do you want to pick?
There is, you know what? Jonah Rock's always a good one.
Yeah.
Take out the biggest and the baddest. Sexton, there's something about him that makes me just want to smack his face. But realistically,
I get that as well,
You know what? I think for me, it's Damien Slater.
Yeah.
I think if we're going to pick off the top, might as well pick off the best. And to me, Damien Slater is the best. So why not pin him? Why not embarrass him?
Well, also, let's look at another night as well. At Sydney, you'll be taking on Ishii in what will no doubt be a true heavyweight clash, a match I don't think anyone thought they would ever get to see, but lo and behold, there it is for the fans of Sydney.
Yeah, you're right. She's a solid ball of concrete, and I can tell you right now, it is not a wrestling match, it is a brawl. Okay. We will hit each other until one of us is knocked out. It's not going to be a pin or a submission. We are going for KO here. So it's going to be big. I really suggest if you're in Sydney getting your tickets for that one, because I promise you that'll be worth your money.
Do you find a very different side of you comes out when you take on a heavyweight competitor? I've seen you take on Jonah Rock a number of times, and those really are an experience of a match to go and watch. I mean, you've got these two massive bulls just basically clashing head-on in the ring. Do you find that there's a different side of you that comes out in a heavyweight versus heavyweight contest?
I think there needs to be. I think you need to bring out that other side of yourself, because you're not only defending yourself, but you're testing yourself. What are you capable of as a man? What are you capable of as someone who walks around at 136 kilos? It's funny, I get challenged a lot out in the real world because people feel like I'm the bully at the school. The funny thing is, I was the one that was bullied. So I don't stand for that shit. So realistically, being the size I am, I do feel I've got something to prove, and if I have to prove it on Ishii, so be it.
Now, the Melbourne show, which will be taking place on Saturday 17th, will take place at Festival Hall. And this is a venue that is obviously very close to the hearts of long-term Australian wrestling fans. I mean, this is a venue that obviously housed a number of WCW shows in the 60s and also the 70s. And we've obviously found out that since this tour has been announced, that Festival Hall is going to close down.
Yeah.
Therefore, making this New Japan show the last wrestling show to take place at this iconic venue. I mean, as a long-term wrestling fan who's obviously lived your entire life in Australia, I mean, what does this mean to you to be able to perform at Festival Hall just one more time?
It's funny, a lot of people have asked this, and I think it's more not about me. I think it's about wrestling in Australia in general. This is a stamp to show that we have returned to the big time. Wrestling in the 60s at Festival Hall, people still talk about it. When I say I do wrestling and it's to an older person, they tell me, oh, I remember Festival Hall. We're bringing back wrestling in this country. We're going to stamp that we're back and that we're here and that we're serious. And Festival Hall is giving us that opportunity. And I can promise you something, Andy, because a lot of people have asked, the main event, it's an all New Japan main event, and that's fine. But there is no way I'm leaving that hall without an Australian making an impact. I can promise you that.
I guess the final question I really want to ask is, there's a lot of excitement about this show. And I guess for a lot of fans, it's very difficult to put into words why this show is so significant, why this show is just so important. So I'm going to ask you, because I reckon you could answer it a lot better than most people due to your relationship with New Japan. Why is this tour so important to Australian wrestling?
I think if we ever want this to grow in a positive way, if we ever want to be the next UK, US, Japan, this tour has to prove that we have the capability to do so. So not is it up to the talent that is on the show, because I have no doubt the talent that we've picked to be on this show from this country will blow it out the park. But fans need to come and prove that wrestling is still important to them, that wrestling means something in this country. We all grew up loving wrestling. We all stayed up late nights and watched it on Channel 10. This is our opportunity to bring back the good times. You know, I'm not a fan, but Donald Trump says, make America great again. Let's make wrestling great again. Let's make it what it was when we were kids and teenagers and we would sit there and watch it night after night just because we loved it. Let's bring back the passion and love. Let's enjoy wrestling again.
Bravo. Well, thank you very much for that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the New Japan Pro Wrestling Australian Down Under Tour is taking place 16th of February all the way through, of course, to the 19th of February. Shows will be taking place in Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney and Perth. And if you want to get tickets, please go to tickets.destroyalllines.com. Well, Gino Gambino, Mr. Juicy, thank you very
so
much for joining me.
I really appreciate you having me.
it.
Thank you.
My name's been Lord Andy Coyne. This is One Fall. Thank you and good night.